Real Italian flavors are fresh, authentic, and never come in a bag. Like Carando Premium Meatballs. Our savored meatballs are made from 100% pork and blended with zesty Italian herbs, spices, and cheeses, delivering that perfect balance of fresh flavor you crave. From mozzarella rustica to cheesy Abruzzese to spicy Sicilian, you'll find Carando meatballs in the refrigerated meat section of your grocer. Carando. Life is delicious. Savor it. For recipes and more, visit carando.com.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, it's for you, all you canine lovers.
It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh Burke and canine co-hosts
Bruno
and Milly.
The Big Bark.
Hello and a big welcome to another episode of The Big Bark Podcast, Ireland's favourite canine podcast. I'm your host, Darragh Burke, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful canine co-hosts, Bruno and Milly. Now, first of all, this one, I want to take the opportunity to thank everyone for tuning in last week. The first episode of our summer series, which was all about the Darragh Festival that's coming up. It's become one of our highest rated and downloaded episodes to date. We have over 8,000 downloads so far on that, so I'm absolutely delighted with that. We'll be chatting with Paddy from Causey Farm again next week in the run-up to Darragh, just to get a little update on if there's anything else added and to remind people about what's actually happening on today. Now, don't forget our competition to win tickets for Darragh is still running over on Instagram, and that runs up until Friday, this Friday coming. And you have a chance to win 4 tickets to Darragh, so get on over and check it out. Now, back to today's show. Coming up a bit later on, we'll be chatting with vet Siobhan O Neill from Trusty Vets in our health hub about the different ways summer and everything that goes with summer, such as like pollen, bees, swimming, anything like that can affect your dog. We'll be checking in our news desk with the latest news in the canine world, and we'll be telling you which venue is our dog-friendly business of the week, and we'll give you some details on how your pup can become the Big Bark Dog of the Week. We'll also be chatting a bit later on about the importance of teaching families with children to train their dogs so the dogs and children can live side by side and can learn to respect one another and particularly one another's space. Now, Debby Lucken, the founder of Kids Around Dogs, has signed a successful protocol to overcome the fear of dogs and kids, and has built Kids Around Dogs to help children and help dogs live in harmony together. Now, Debby joins us now as this week's co-host. Debby, a big welcome to the Big Bark. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So, Debby, we'll be chatting a bit later on about the importance of training so that dogs and children can live together and get along together. But first of all, would you like to give our listeners a bit of background on you?
Yes, of course. So I'm actually originally from Switzerland, but I've lived in the UK almost 20 years now, and I'm based in Dorset Pool. I'm a qualified dog trainer with the IMDT and a behaviorist with the ISCB. I'm part of a few associations, such as the Dog Welfare Alliance, the ICANN, PPG, PPN, all those companies. And I have a daughter who's 10 years old. And when she was a bit younger and she started having friends over, she brought those friends over, and I realized how there were a lot of children who were scared of dogs, very scared of dogs, so much they would climb on their parents or try to get away, try to run away, screaming. And they would full aware that dogs would be in the house when visiting. Yeah, they'd be happy to come. And then once they realized that actually a dog was really there, they couldn't quite cope with it. And then I also saw the other side of things. There were children that were way too confident around dogs. They were on our dogs' faces. They were trying to even ride one of our dogs. So it was it was the polar opposite of the children who were scared of dogs. So I started looking around to try and find a solution to help children, to make sure that they knew how to be around dogs and how to understand them and how to not fear them. And I realized there was nothing in the UK for this issue. And so I started Kids Around Dogs, and now we are successfully helping children all over the country to be happy around dogs, and to make sure that the dogs are happy around children as well. So that's us.
That's fantastic, and it's all been going well for you. How was everything, I suppose, during COVID? I'd say there was a lot of adjustment there.
Actually, for as horrible as COVID has been and still is, it actually provided a way of having to get more in touch with the rest of the world, if you like. Has almost made people do more online things, and that I think has helped Kids Around Dogs to reach out to other parts of the countries. We have some members in Ireland as well, and Canada, in the US, and I think that maybe without COVID, we wouldn't have been able to have so many people join us online. All our courses are done online, and the protocol to overcome the fear of dogs is also actually 7 online sessions to teach children around dogs and to help them through little games and get them more familiar with dogs without being confronted with them just yet. And then we also have face-to-face sessions. So overall, COVID, if anything, might have even helped us to grow and be where we are now.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we're going to come back a little bit later on to how dogs and children get along together, and we're going to talk a good bit more about you with that later on. Now, first of all, we're going to go over to the newsroom, and we're going to get our segment called The Weird and the Wonderful. So, just a moment, and I hope I have the right sound effect here. Okay. Alright, so this is the segment where we look up, I suppose, the weird and the wonderful news that's happening in the canine world. Now, unfortunately, there are times as well where there's, I suppose, a bit of sad news as well that happens, and we have seen, and this is particularly relevant to what we're talking about a bit later on today, we have seen a lot of, I suppose, attacks on children in recent years, and not even just recent years, going back many years, by dogs. And there was one that happened over the weekend, I believe it was in Manchester, Debbie, where a young 3-year-old boy was killed. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that, because you might be a bit more familiar with the circumstances than what we are here? So
as of right now, the police is still investigating, so we're not exactly sure of how, the logistic of the accident. But yes, a 3-year-old boy was killed due to a dog attack. And it did happen near Manchester. Rochdale is the town. And it would appear that the dog had previously bitten someone. So it might have a history of biting. But again, we don't know exactly who the dog has bitten before, if it'd been children, if it'd been someone else. But it would appear that the dog had a history already of biting. So there was something there, again, that possibly could have been prevented. But going back to what you actually said at the beginning, on the seeing more dog accidents or dog bites, we have actually definitely seen an increase lately, and it seems to be almost one after another, and it's almost always fatality of children, and it's just is not right. This has to stop. We really need to do better for our children and for our dogs, because ultimately they're also paying the price, and it's just not right.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, if you look at it this way as well, like, it's like if there's a history there as well with the dog, like you mentioned, there may have been, like, is this whole, I suppose, this notion that's there that once a dog draws blood, that he's going to do it again. Is that actually, like, is there any real basis to that, or is it just like that there needs to be more proper training done on both sides? Like, children need to be shown how to handle dogs and respect their space, and equally, like, dogs need to be trained to be around children.
So it's a yes or no kind of answer, in the sense that if a dog has bitten before, it's very likely that the dog basically has been pushed so much, and dogs give us plenty of signals to let us know, look, I've had enough now, move away, stop this, or whatever. And if we don't listen, they're going to have to push harder. They're going to have to tell us in a more convincing way that they want us to move away. And they might bare their teeth, they might growl, and then ultimately, obviously, is the bite. And so it's very likely that this dog and other dogs that have been bitten, humans or other creatures, would have warned the person. In this case, say, would have warned the child, and the child would not have understood the warning as such. And so the dog had to resort with what works best, and what worked also in the past best. So if a dog, to kind of quickly answer your question, if a dog has bitten before, it is likely that it will do it again, simply because it's worked out that biting did work. It did stop the stressful situation he was in, or the upsetting situation. And if it worked once, then I'm going to do it again, because hopefully it's going to work again and you're going to leave me alone. So it is very likely, that is what happened. So yeah, and educating children, which is our one of our biggest goal, can help them to realize maybe some inappropriate behavior around dogs. One of the biggest one, and I'm not saying by all means that this case was the case, but one of the biggest thing I see is the good night kiss. So it's time to go to bed, and the dog is asleep in his bed, and the child goes, "Oh, I'm going to give him a good night kiss," which is what we parents do. We go and tuck the kids into bed, and we give them the good night kiss. I do that every night with my daughter. Before I go to bed, she's asleep, and I'm going to give her my good night kiss. And it works fine with humans, but not with dogs. So if a dog is asleep, for instance, we really need to make sure the children leave them alone. They can always blow them a kiss, of course, or say good night from a distance, but without going to disturb a dog. And that is one of, quite a big thing, the disturbing a dog when they're asleep, for instance. Management in families is also very important. So make sure that parents are always supervising, actively supervising.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And we're going to come back to that, as I said, a bit later on. And we'll keep going with our little news segment now. And we have, I suppose it's a bit of weird news that we're going on to next. There is a pug on TikTok that apparently people are going to. He has over 3 million followers on TikTok, this dog does. His name is Noodle. And he is giving people their daily horoscopes, apparently. A pug. Right, this is some of the weirdest news now I've seen in a while, and I've seen a lot of weird dog news recently. But basically, Noodle is an old dog, and each morning her owner Jonathan wakes up to see she's awoken with bones underneath her. And on a day that Noodle wakes up with bones underneath her, her followers are considering this it's going to be a good day. But if Noodles wakes up again with no bones, Jonathan, the owner, advises to take it easy and practice self-care. Now, the thing about it is, Noodle always wakes up with bones, but like some days she's just too tired to get up and she's all floppy. And when he picks her up like she just wants to go back to sleep, and apparently that's why no bones days. So like, I'm sorry, but like that's just not only is that weird, but that's like one of the biggest cons going. Like, and has over like 3 million followers on TikTok for this. I still can't understand this whole TikTok thing. But I tried to post a few videos myself, and I really can't get into it. But like a pug that has 3 million followers for predicting people's futures, that's a bit mad, isn't it?
It is indeed. I'm laughing because I have a pug. He predicts nothing.
And here's I suppose our wonderful news of today. There was a dog over in Texas, and it led rescuers to a missing owner. So Sherry Knapp is 63. She was announced missing in Harris County on May 4th, and she was last seen walking her black Labrador Max. She had been recently diagnosed with dementia, but basically the dog, from what I can understand from this, once in the area, so volunteers went looking, and once in the area she had fallen, and the volunteers heard the barking of her dog, which actually led the volunteers to her. So that's a wonderful story to hear. That like it's just amazing, like how dogs, I suppose, can be there for our protection and for our safety. Like there is the other side, like that you mentioned, where dogs get stressed, you invade their personal space, something else can go entirely wrong. But like in this case here, like you see that like this woman who went missing and the dog's barking led the volunteers to find her, which is an amazing story to hear.
Really moving. This is one of the things that we also talk about especially when we're dealing with children who are scared of dogs. We do highlight how much dogs really do for us. And look at that. That's amazing.
And that's very true. And I suppose, like, going into our final story for this, we have a report that was a study that was done there recently, and I think anyone can kind of tell this anywhere, but dog owners are happier than non-dog owners, a report has found. The study of 2,204 adults found that dogs benefit from the simple act of walking their canine chum, and 31% feel less lonely when they go for a stroll with their pet. 69% of dog owners have more meaningful interactions. And let's see, dog owners with disability are almost 4 times as many conversations a month than disabled people without dogs, which compares to 3 interactions per month with people. And 81% of dog owners attributed their social interactions and connections to their dog. Like, being a dog trainer yourself, Debbie, what's your view on that?
Oh, I completely see that. And I see it even just myself. I talk to my dogs all the time. So, that conversation is very interesting also. But they get you out of the house, first of all, because, you go for a walk. And there is that thing in common with other people, or even if they don't have dogs, but they see a dog with you, there is that, oh, look how cute that dog is, or they strike a conversation about dogs, and it just makes things easier. In fact, I work with quite a lot of autistic children as well that find it difficult to have conversations. And very often having the dog there helps them, because there is something that takes the pressure away from themselves. It goes into the dog, and then you can talk about the dog, and they'll be quite happy to talk about their dog. So again, I can totally see that. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and like I think, like even going back to a few weeks ago, we had Susie Walsh, who's a dog trainer here in Ireland, and Dr. Bobby Ortiz on as well, and we were talking all about the benefits of dogs for mental health in that episode, and like that was again one of our like most highly downloaded episodes recently as well. But I know for myself, like my own dogs, like the mental health benefits they provided to me, like I think, and I mentioned this even in that episode with Bobby and Susie, that like I actually met my partner, I met my girlfriend Jen because of my dogs, and like she'll always say to me that like it was the dog she said yes to go out to, not me. So like I think he definitely won her over, like Bruno did, and then we got Millie as well. So like Millie definitely kind of won her over too, and like I think just the bonds that dogs can actually create, not even between human and dog, but between other humans as well. It's just amazing.
Yeah. It's I remember a little. I went out for lunch with a friend, and he didn't have a dog, so I brought my dog, and he had to wait for me outside while I just went inside the restaurant. So he waited with the dog, and he was single at the time. I was already married, and I came out to get my dog back. He's like, actually, can I borrow him? Two girls just talking to me because of your dog. So can I just hang around with the dog for a while? I'm gonna have a girlfriend in no time. Wow. And it was just so funny.
Well, that actually reminds me of my last dog. Like I had a dog years ago, Coco, and like it was the weirdest thing because Coco used to like people actually used to start calling my dog a bit of a perv because every girl that would go past, you just see Coco's head just literally turn around and stare right at them, at their behinds, and like she was kind of, I suppose back then, like this was before I met Jen, this was a few years before that, and she was meant to be like, I suppose my little wing dog as I called it back then, but I was like, oh my god dude, you're embarrassing me, stop doing this please. And I suppose there was another day that like I was down in the university here in Limerick, and I threw a frisbee. Now the frisbee got caught in the wind, and it went the completely wrong way. And I was like, oh, there was a girl like walking past. I was like, oh god, oh shit, this is going to end really badly. And luckily the frisbee didn't hit her, but Coco literally just tore straight through her and turned her upside down just to get the frisbee. Like Coco walks over and see, are you okay? Yeah, you're grand. I got out my frisbee, and I'm just like, what the hell happened?
Yeah. But that's one way of meeting friends, making friends.
Well, it did spark up a conversation at the time already, but like it is amazing how dogs can actually like do that. She's looking at me then, like the dog is like, "See, I helped you."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh god, this is so embarrassing. But anyway, that is our, I suppose, a bit extended, weird and wonderful for this week. And next up, we will have our health hub, and to do that we go over to Tree Vets to talk to Siobhan O Neill. And welcome to this week's Health Hub, and this week the Health Hub is brought to you by Tree Veterinary Clinic in Limerick, and I'm delighted to be joined on the line now by Tree Vets, Dr. Siobhan O Neill. Siobhan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Darragh. Thanks for having me on the show.
Delighted to have you on. Okay, so Siobhan, we'll dive straight into it, I suppose. First thing,
okay.
I suppose I want to talk to you today, now that we're getting into the height of the summer season, it's something that I actually saw with Millie myself last year, and even a bit earlier on this year, where she got a sting of a bee. And,
okay.
like, obviously, this time of year you have a high count of pollen as well. So, would you just run through a few of the things that affect our dogs in terms of pollen, in terms of the likes of bee stings, and how to actually deal with those?
Sure, no problem. So yeah, you're absolutely right. This time of year, we are actually seeing a lot of dogs with bee stings. Usually what you would see is a swelling either in the leg or the face, wherever they get stung by the bee. Sometimes you can hear the dog yelp. And usually if once they bring the dog, they'll ring up the clinic and we can give them some advice over the phone. On very rare occasions, they can have an anaphylactic reaction, which is a life-threatening reaction. So we need to see the dog straight away. It would be an emergency. But usually it would be a swelling. If the dog is chasing the bee or playing with the bee, it's usually around the paw or somewhere around the mouth. And we can give some medications to reduce the swelling and take away the sting.
Life is full of delicious moments, like when a big table of friends feels like a big table of family, or when the meal you made and shared brings in all the likes on your feed. That's why Carando offers premium meatballs, delicious, savored meatballs made with real Italian flavors, to help you savor the big and small moments that make life so good. Carando. Life is delicious. Savor it. For recipes and more, visit carando.com. Real Italian flavors are fresh, authentic, and never come in a bag. Like Carando Premium Meatballs. Our savored meatballs are made from 100% pork and blended with zesty Italian herbs, spices, and cheeses, delivering that perfect balance of fresh flavor you crave. From mozzarella rustica to cheesy Abruzzese to spicy Sicilian, you'll find Carando meatballs in the refrigerated meat section of your grocer. Carando. Life is delicious. Savor it. For recipes and more, visit carando.com.
So that's really with bee stings. But yeah, the one thing that I would say there is that it can be life-threatening if the dog is having an anaphylactic reaction to that.
Perfect. And in the case then, Siobhan, of, I suppose, seasonal allergies, with obviously, like last year, we saw a very high count of pollen around this time. And from what I gathered, they're saying that like they're expecting that kind of wave of pollen to hit a bit later this year, because like there hasn't been much dry weather, and that comes with like the likes of cotton and grass and all, from what I understand. I'm a culture myself, but I'm not that much of a culture. I don't know all that. But
I've heard that as well. But I think there is later on in the summer there will be a high pollen count as well. So we are going to be seeing pollen allergies and things like that as well. Okay, for sure.
And what are some of the symptoms to watch out for with regards to seasonal allergies?
So there's lots of different types of seasonal allergies. The reactions that dogs have to allergens are slightly different to humans. Seasonal allergies can include itchy skin, ear infections or recurring ear infections, sneezing, or what we call reverse sneezing, which people can be quite, they're not sure what reverse sneezing is. And it sounds like the dog is choking, but it's just, we call it a reverse sneeze. Swollen eyes, very red eyes, and also a nasal discharge, or what we would call a runny nose. So these are all signs of seasonal allergies. Okay. Also, what we see is if a dog was walking on freshly cut grass, seasonal allergies can be grass, pollens, trees, moles, all these type of things. If a dog is walking on freshly cut grass and they come in and they're licking and chewing at their paws, that's another sign of seasonal allergies. So it's very, very important to make sure that if your dog is chewing at the feet, or if there's very redness in between the toes, or if there's moistness in the toes, that you keep the dog off the grass for about 3 to 4 days, and also make sure to give them a good rinse down. The feet have to have a good rinse down and a good dry off before they come inside. Okay,
perfect, Siobhan. And obviously, Siobhan, at this time of year as well, like it's real flea and tick season as well. Now, obviously, dogs can get fleas, pets in general can get fleas all year round, but they're more prone to it during the summer season. Am I correct?
Absolutely, yes, especially ticks, and we're seeing a lot of ticks earlier on this year. Now, if an itchy dog came in to see me, first of all, I would rule out parasites, so external parasites. Now that can include fleas. So if external parasites we can see with our eyes, or we would have to see under a microscope. So that would include fleas, which we can see, ticks, harvest mites, and ear mites. We can see all these things with our, the vet can see these and prescribe appropriate prescription only medications for these things. I would never advise anyone to try and remove a tick themselves, because they can cause more injury to the dog or the cat. Then we would have the other parasites, which are microscopic, which you cannot see, and there's a few different types of mange mites, and also there's lice as well. You can see lice with your own eyes. It's like a walking dandruff. So we have to rule all these out before we can actually diagnose seasonal allergies. And it's really, really important. I can't stress how important it is to use a good preventative parasite treatment. Either every month, we provide monthly treatments, or every 3 months. And this can be in topical form, where you place a small amount of liquid at the back of the head, or it can be in tablet form. So there's lots of different types we can give, and we assess each dog and cat individually, and rabbits and guinea pigs and all the small little furries. They all need them as well. We assess them all individually, and then come up with a tailored plan for what they need, and then we would send reminders out monthly and every 3 months, depending on what product we use.
Okay, that's fantastic, and that's really good information. If you feel that your dog has a serious allergy, obviously the best advice is to contact your vet at once.
Absolutely, for sure. So once we've ruled out external parasites, then we can get into the allergens. Is it a seasonal allergy? Is it a environmental allergy? Is it a food allergy? The food and the environmental allergies, sometimes we can change it can be down to nutrition. That's very important. So sometimes I would just recommend trialing a veterinary prescription diet. It's like a derm diet, a skin diet, or a hypoallergenic diet. Now, you would have to use this diet for at least 6 weeks before you would see any results, and the dog or cat can have no other treats unless they are hypoallergenic. Along with these type of diets, we can use lots of different types of medications. There's lots of medications that we can use for skin allergies. So the chewing of the feet, the redness of the belly, the redness around the face, the itchy ears, the chronic itchy ears is just recurring ear infections. The ears are basically an extension of the skin. It's really trial and error, so we can try them on tablets, different types of tablets, and then we would see them back every week, and then see them back in 2 weeks' time, and just see how they're getting on. We can give injections. There's different types of injections that we can get, monthly injections. So there's lots of different things that we can do, but we have to assess every single patient individually. Every single patient is different.
Okay, that's fantastic information, and we'll leave it there, Siobhan. And thanks ever so much for joining us today, Dr. Siobhan O Neill from Trusty Vets on the Health Hub here at the Big Bark.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you again to Siobhan O Neill from Trusty Vets. Thanks to all the team at Trusty Vets, and I suppose, like, they do such good work. Even Millie there recently, she decided to fight with a bumblebee, and like they were able to get her on antibiotics. Her nose got all swollen, they were able to get her on antibiotics, and like at least like she's completely healed now. So she's been a bit stoned at times because she's literally been lying there with her legs up in the air and like, are you all right there? Like, but she's loving life anyway, and she's back to herself. And anyway, now we're going to move on, and Debbie, we're going to talk about our main topic today, which is, and we touched on already in our newsroom, but it's all about kids around dogs and helping kids to actually live with dogs and respect their personal space. So, Debbie, like as you mentioned, you got into this because you saw there was no one really doing this in the UK, and it is a big thing in the UK, and like respecting a dog's space is like not even just for kids, for adults as well. It's so important.
Indeed, yes. Obviously, we concentrate on children, and the idea is because they sometimes listen more than grown-ups. Or at least they listen to someone else who is not their parents, I should say. But also, children are our future, aren't they? So if we start with them, hopefully then they grow up to be more savvy around dogs and to respect them more and to understand them more and to just, have more empathy towards them. So, yeah, that's why we concentrate on children. But undoubtedly, parents learn as well, and school teachers and other professionals. So, yes, adults also should learn more.
Okay, and we're coming into the summer now. Like, we've been focusing a lot about summer in our last couple of episodes because the weather's getting nicer, but it also means that children are going to be off school as well. So there will be a lot more, I suppose, canine-human interaction there. And, like, how do you teach your children how do you actually teach a child to actually respect a dog's space? How do you teach them, like, you have a model, obviously, how do you teach them to actually interact with dogs and respect their space so that they can live side by side together?
So the first thing I would say that we do is to teach children very, very basic canine body language, very basic things. They don't have to turn into experts. Although, to be fair, they will learn more than the average dog handler out there. So yes, they will learn quite they will have quite a good knowledge of canine body language. So by knowing even just a few signals, they'll know that dog is not happy with that situation. So they'll understand, okay, that dog is doing that, so I need to move away. For instance, if the dog turns around, that is not an invitation to follow, but that is actually a way for the dog to say, can you please stay away from me? Then say that they want to pet a dog, which is a very common thing. And it's always the question of can you be polite and ask the owner, but also ask the dog. So yes, go to the owner and say, oh, can I please pet your dog? And if the owner says yes, then have a look at the dog. So that canine body language is always there, always kind of in the background anyway. And we also show them where they should pet a dog. For instance, the usual hand on top of the head of the dog is not always appreciated by dogs, so we don't recommend it, but rather the chest or under the mouth. That's really nice. Or the back of the dog. Stay away from the tail, stay away from the paws, and unless the dog is your dog, is extremely familiar, then stay away from the belly as well. So show them where the dog should be petted is also one of the things that we show children to do. And the other thing is that you might find that a lot of dogs are also let off the lead, and and again, with more children around, they might get overexcited or might not be too familiar with so many children, or even children that are a bit, they're a bit more fidgety children. So a dog might get a little bit over enthusiastic and go and check them out, even jump at children. That's quite common. First thing I would say, get a trainer and train your dog not to do that. And if your dog is the kind of dog that at the moment that still runs off and jump at people, keep them on the lead and do the work necessary. And from the child's point of view instead, we use the be a statue pose. That's when they stand up, cross their arm over their chest, lower their head, and just wait for the dog to get bored of them and to then move away. So that way the child feels more in control of the situation as well.
Okay, and like even just there, like you mentioned about like asking the owner for permission. Now, there's one thing that I've actually noticed quite a lot, and it's in the dog park here in Limerick, and I find it very unusual, like where inside the dog park, it's now I can't really even call it a dog park, to be honest. It's literally just a field of muck. But when it first opened last year, I noticed that like there were people, like the parents were outside the fence, and they were just leaving their children like inside, just running around with all these different dogs, like up to 15, 20 dogs, where these children have probably never met these dogs before, don't know what they're like, and trying to run up to every dog. Like, what do you say to parents in that case?
So goes back to supervise your children, and by not just being there is not enough. So actively supervising. So in this case, say that I were to be at the dog park, I'll be, and you're desperate to be in with the dogs. then you're going to have to hold your hand, the child's hand as well. And if they're a bit too old to hold your hand, then just be with them, but don't just riot and run around a bunch of dogs that they don't even know. It's just not safe, and it could also be a little bit irresponsible in a way. So be there with your child. They could actually maybe take the child out to the fence and say, let's observe the dog. What are the dogs doing? Let's talk about this. Are the dog playing? Are the dog tired? Do you think all the dogs are happy? So they can point out a little bit of the canine body language to do something with the dogs. It's still like something to do with them, but in a much safer way and more positive as well.
Ideal. And Debbie, even just looking on your website here, on your resources, you have something called the Steps of Fear. Now, this really kind of goes into like canine body language. So, can you talk us through some of the actual body language that, if, say, for example, if a child doesn't understand, if even the parents can understand and get their child away from what could be an escalating situation before it's too late?
Yeah. So yes, the Steps of Fear, I should say, that although they follow, if you go on our website, kidsarounddogs.co.uk, is one of the free resources. And although it does look like the dog escalates from specific points to others, is not always the case. So it's not always the same anyway for all dogs. One dog might lick their lips as a first sign of stress, while one dog might scratch as a first sign of stress. So it depends on the dog. But the Steps of Fear kind of gives you a general idea of some of the steps the dogs can take. So as I mentioned before, for instance, lip licking is something that my pug does, Wilco, when he's not too happy. Let's say that's one of his go-to signals. He's going to lick his lips. My golden retriever Winnie, instead, she has the scratch. She scratches herself when things are a bit too stressful for her. She just sits there and starts scratching herself for apparently no reason, but it's actually her saying, a bit much, guys, I need some time out. And that is definitely her go-to signal, a sign. So it'd be interesting to observe everyone's dog, your own dog, and have a little look. So what does your dog do normally when it is not too happy? Some dogs have a very clear, I'm just going to walk away from this way of talking to us, literally by turning their back at us if they're on the lead, turning their head. If they're off the lead, they might just take off and just walk away. And if that's the case, it's not an invitation to follow the dog. And if the dog sits and turns their head as well, we should never pressure the dog to do what he doesn't want to. So say that a child goes, oh, can I pet your dog? And the dog sits and turns his head away or moves his body away. We shouldn't go, come on, Bruno, your dog. Come on, Bruno, go give the child a cuddle. We shouldn't do that because the dog said no. So we shouldn't force the dog to do something he doesn't want to do, because then he might resort to going up the steps and take use further signals until then he reach the worst ones because he's just been pushed too much.
Yeah, very true. And also, Debbie, I suppose on the other end of the scale, there is also body language that dogs give off that they are, I suppose, readily acceptable, like to like hugs or like rubs, or even like obviously belly rubs as well. Dogs, like I know my own two dogs absolutely love that. But what are some of the signals that dogs can give us where they're okay with being approached?
So if you're in doubt, if you think, oh, what should I look for? You can also do a consent game. So first of all, if the dog approaches you, that's all right, isn't it? We didn't push ourselves into the dog. It's the dog that chose to come to us. So that's quite nice. And then you can give them a cuddle, for example, on the back, as I said before, and count to 3. So give them a cuddle, 1, 2, 3, and then take your hand away and see what the dog does. If the dog leans into you or kind of pushes himself into you, my pug Wilco scratches with his paw when he wants more. Those are all signs that goes, yeah, I like that. Can you carry on, please? If instead the dog kind of freezes or walks away or again turns his head away or yawn, for example, as well, then I might be, actually, can you stop that? I don't want you to carry on. And so we should respect that. And okay, I understand. Thank you so much. See you later. So the dog can tell us as well in those ways that he's enjoying an interaction.
That's brilliant. And okay, Debbie. So any final tips that you'd provide to dog owners and like to help their children interact with dogs? What would be your number one tip?
So my number one tip, I talked about it before, but supervision is definitely number one. Be actively supervised. So if you're on your phone, for example, texting or being on social media, that's not active supervision because you're distracted. So you're not actually watching the kids and dogs. And the other thing is management. So in your house, use stair gates, use playpen. You use those things because they're really, really a life-saving sometimes. You just put a stair gate somewhere and then you can keep the dog and child separate for a bit while the dog does something else, has a nap or munches on a bone or whatever, and the child can play and watch TV or whatever, does his homework as if. So that way, the parents can also relax a little bit because they can actually do something else, even cooking or again being on social media or whatever. But they don't have that stress of having to actively supervising all the time because the dog is somewhere else and it's fine.
Fantastic. Okay, so thanks again, Debbie, for all that information. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Very quickly before we wrap up, we're going to name our dog-friendly business of the week, and that is Chase Cafe in Chase Caravan Park out in County Limerick. So I'll be dropping out a lovely window decal to you guys in the next couple of weeks to let you know you're being our dog-friendly business of the week. And I suppose the final thing is, don't forget they do puppuccinos, lovely puppuccinos out in Chase there. So be sure to drop into one and the lads outside there, and you'll get your puppuccino for your puppies. So over the next few weeks, we'll be doing our Big Bark Dog of the Week, and we will be picking people from social media, from our Instagram page, for like their dogs to be Dog of the Week. We'll have a few prizes announced for that over the coming weeks, and we'll be putting up more details on that on our Instagram page later this week as well. So that's really all the time that we have today. That's quite a long episode that we have today. And Debbie, thanks again for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. So lovely chatting to you.
No problem. And okay, so next week we'll have Peter back, as I mentioned at the top of the show. We'll have him back just to chat about everything that's happening with Dogitude. We had a brilliant episode last week with him, so we're going to have him back on again. And I think we could probably record 4 or 5 episodes, the amount that we actually talked last week as well. Don't forget, our competition is still going on over on Instagram. And if you want to listen to this podcast, you can do it on our website, bigbark.ie. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, and anywhere that you get your podcasts, really. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. You'll find us at the Big Bar Podcast there. Listen, thanks everyone for joining us this week, and thanks again to Debbie. And we'll chat to you next week. Have a great week, and give your dogs lots of cuddles for us.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, is for you, all you canine lovers. It's
It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host, Darragh Burke, and canine co-hosts,
Bruno
and Milly.
The Big Bark.